It's not your typical crime drama. It's real-life stuff that makes you question what's going on next door. Stick around because we're about to unravel 3 stories that hit hard, proving that real life can get much darker than fiction, especially when it comes to these evil parents for taking their kids' lives. It all started when a concerned citizen noticed a vehicle at a gas station, especially near the dumpsters. They felt something was off and decided to call the police. Little did they know, this simple act of vigilance would lead to a shocking discovery. Officers acted on this tip, found a backpack, blood, and even what seemed to be brain matter near those dumpsters. Soon after, the officers conducted a traffic stop on the vehicle in question. When they approached the driver, Julissa Angelica Genrich Thaler, they couldn't ignore the broken back window and noticed blood on her hand. As if that wasn't strange enough, they spotted a shotgun shell and spent casing inside the vehicle. The unsettling scene continued with traces of blood in the car and what looked like a bullet hole in the back seat. When questioned about the blood and flesh found in her vehicle, Thaler offered a bizarre explanation. She claimed the blood was from a tampon and the flesh from a deer she had supposedly purchased from a butcher.
It looks like blood in there.
It's not blood, it's deer meat. I had a big bag and there's a farm around here that does deer meat and hamburger.
The officers, of course, didn't buy it and decided to search the vehicle thoroughly. Thaler was allowed to return home after about half an hour in police custody. But what they found in the trunk was beyond horrifying. The lifeless body of a young boy who had been shot alongside a shotgun.
Holy we got a body. All right.
Thaler had allegedly shot the young victim, Eli Hart, up to 9 times, including a shot to the head. She faced charges of murder at a time when she and Eli's father, Torrey Hart, were entangled in a custody battle over their son. Disturbing evidence suggested Thaler's fixation on her ex when questioned by the police about the tragic incident. Torrey Hart, in an attempt to shed light on the circumstances leading to this heart-wrenching event, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Dakota County and 3 social services employees. The lawsuit alleged negligence, asserting that the authorities ignored warnings from family members and other signs pointing to Thaler as a danger to Eli. The police were quite familiar with Thaler's Farmington home as they visited it 21 times over 10 months. In one incident, Thaler was arrested for stealing drugs from a clinic, which led to a change in her drug testing facility due to perceived bizarre behavior. She faced the loss of custody of her son twice, first in 2020 and then again in 2021. The testimony of an ex-boyfriend, Robert Pickerainen, provided a glimpse into the evening before Eli's death. According to Pickerainen, Thaler and Eli argued because the young boy didn't want to go to sleep. Thaler reportedly left the apartment, placing a recently purchased shotgun in her car. She returned, grabbed Eli, and went downstairs. Pickerainen, unaware of what was happening, fell asleep. The next morning, he questioned Thaler about her whereabouts, to which she vaguely responded that she had to go do something. The traffic stop later that day would unravel the heartbreaking truth. According to a GoFundMe campaign organized to support Eli's funeral costs, the young boy spent 11 months in the care of extended family members. However, in December 2021, a judge decided to allow Eli to return to his mother's care for a home trial. The fundraiser description highlighted the concerns raised by Torrey, Eli's father, who fought to get custody due to numerous red flags from Eli's mother. Multiple people reportedly expressed their concerns to Child Protective Services, fearing for Eli's safety if full custody were to be reinstated. Despite these concerns, full custody was returned to Thaler on May 10, 2022. Among the findings were Google searches made by Julissa Thaler that deeply implicated her intentions. There were searches such as how to keep a child away from the other parent with visitation, how to fake being home to the cops, how much blood can a 6-year-old lose, and qualifying accidental deaths. There was even one that read, how much does life insurance pay for a dead child? Father Torrey Hart was devastated. During his testimony, he was always really happy, outgoing, always full of energy, always, he said. He was everything to me. He completed my life. Just loved spending time with me. Loved spending time with him. The judge delivered the harshest possible sentence for Julissa Thaler. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When asked if she had any comments, instead of offering regrets, she said something no one would ever expect.
I'm innocent. You all, you're garbage.
But the next one will shake you to the core. A baby's life was brutally taken away over the virtual farming game, Farmville. The story of Alexandra Tobias is heart-wrenching, the kind no one saw coming. At just 22, she was a new mom to 3-month-old Dylan Lee Edmondson. It was January 2010, and Dylan had recently celebrated his first Christmas, a joyous occasion that would sadly be the only one he'd ever known. In a desperate moment, Alexandra called paramedics when Dylan stopped breathing. At just 3 months old, he was rushed to the hospital with severe head injuries and a broken leg. He eventually succumbed to the fatal consequences. Doctors labeled his cause of death as abusive head trauma. In the initial questioning, Alexandra offered a story of a dog causing Dylan's fall from the couch, which resulted in the fatal injuries. But the truth came out during subsequent interviews. Alexandra confessed to a far more distressing reality, a moment of lost temper driven by the demands of a virtual farming game on Facebook called Farmville, which had got her attention. As Dylan's cries became a distraction, Alexandra, overwhelmed and angered, described to police how she shook her baby son. She then momentarily stepped away to smoke a cigarette in an attempt to calm down before returning and repeating the act. Although she was a terrible mom, according to some, she wasn't always like that. According to Tobias's friend Jason Smith, Tobias was intensely protective of her infant son, Dylan Lee Edmondson. She was so cautious that she wouldn't even allow others, including the baby's father, to hold him. She claimed she always made sure he was comfortable and safe whenever they went out. But the friend also suggested that a breaking point may have been reached, pointing to the infant's crying as a potential trigger. The emotional toll of the baby's distress seemed to escalate, which eventually led to the tragic outcome. But in court, Tobias looked regretful.
I realize I do deserve consequences, but the death of my son is a life sentence in itself. So could you please consider that I am still young and I have ambition, potential, hopes, and dreams.
Police records also paint a troubled picture, revealing a recent incident on December 27th, where Tobias was charged with fighting with Dylan's father, Earl Jackson Edmondson III. The altercation resulted in both individuals being arrested, with Tobias given 6 months probation and mandated to attend an anger control class within 30 days. The involvement of the State Department of Children and Families was noted in the report, as Dylan was present during the fight, but it remains unclear if the agency intervened in the situation.
You shall be incarcerated for a term of 50 years.
Alexandria Tobias had little reaction when the judge told her she will spend the next 50 years in jail for shaking her young baby to death.
Alexandra Tobias spared everyone the painful ordeal of a trial and, on October 27, 2010, chose to plead guilty to second-degree murder charges. In an interview 4 years later, she claimed she doesn't remember anything.
You're on the computer, let the dog out.
And I'm in the living room.
And what happened?
It is mind-blowing how people can be so obsessive over such small things, to the point where they lose their minds and do things they will regret for the rest of their lives. Our last case is perhaps the worst case of them all. Imagine killing your own child for religious beliefs. In September 2019, the quiet town of Chandler, Arizona became the center of a tragic case involving 2 missing children, Tylee Ashlyn Ryan and Joshua Jackson J.J. Vallow. The siblings disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and their bone-chilling discovery in shallow graves in Rexburg, Idaho, on June 9, 2020, shocked everyone.
Investigators and detectives have recovered what's believed to be human remains that are not identified at this time.
The burial site was none other than the backyard of Chad Guy Daybell, who, at the time of the children's disappearance, was romantically involved with their mother, Lori Vallow Daybell. He was arrested on the same day and charged with destruction or concealment of evidence.
Chad Daybell, who resides at that residence, has also been taken into custody for questioning.
51-year-old Daybell was seen being led away from his home. No charges have been filed.
Tylee was last seen alive in Yellowstone National Park on September 8, 2019, while JJ's last sighting was on September 22, 2019. Lori and her husband initially claimed that JJ was with a family friend in Arizona, but this claim was contradicted by the friend herself, Melanie Gibb. As the search for JJ continued, the police discovered that little Tylee was also nowhere to be found. But things didn't end with the disappearance of the children. There were a series of very suspicious deaths. First is Charles Vallow, Lori's 4th husband. On January 2019, Charles Vallow reached out to the Gilbert, Arizona Police Department, distressed over not being able to contact his 2 children for several days. When officers arrived, Charles expressed his concerns about Lori's strange beliefs, which revealed a deepening detachment from reality. He explained that Lori considered herself a translated being and a god who talked daily to an ancient prophet and Jesus. These bizarre beliefs, evolving over several years, had gotten worse and worse. During the interaction with the officers, Charles disclosed even more troubling details. She had reportedly claimed that Nick Schneider had taken over his body and allegedly threatened Charles, saying she could murder him with her powers. Fearing not only for his own safety but also for the well-being of JJ and Tylee, Charles called the police. Earlier that day, while on a business trip in Houston, Lori had told him to take the kids. Upon landing, Charles found his truck missing, his clothes gone, and their joint bank account empty. With the truck went his keys to their home. Body camera footage captured the intense moment when Charles and the officers kicked in the door of the home, though some portions of the video were blurred. But the police, armed with an order for Lori's mental health evaluation, chose not to serve it during the night. Their visit was primarily to make sure that the children were safe. No crime having been committed, the police left the home. The next morning, Lori visited the officers to file a report against Charles and voluntarily checked herself in for a mental health examination, later receiving medical clearance. But in July 2019, Lori's brother, Alex Cox, shot and killed Charles at a home in Chandler, Arizona.
That goes to his room, grabs his gun, his own gun, goes back out, doesn't stay in the room, doesn't lock the door, doesn't call us, but goes back out, confronts him, says, drop the bat. Guy doesn't drop the bat. He says he shoots him. Goes back into his room, puts his gun away, grabs his phone, cleans his head up, calls 911.
By September 2019, JJ and Tylee had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Cox himself succumbed to a blood clot in December 2019. But there's more. In October 2019, Brandon Boudreau, Lori's niece's husband, narrowly escaped an attempt on his life from a vehicle registered to Charles Vallow. A police body cam was released in which Brandon mentioned that he was as surprised as the police were. In the same month, Tammy Daybell, Chad's wife, was attacked in her driveway and died 10 days later under initially recorded natural causes. Post Chad and Lori's marriage, Tammy's exhumation revealed she had been asphyxiated. Lori Vallow Daybell was arrested in Kauai, Hawaii on February 20th, 2020, and faced charges of desertion and non-support of her children. She was then extradited to Idaho, landing there on March 5th, 2020 to confront the harsh truth. And on May 25th, 2021, Lori and Chad faced charges of first-degree murders relating to the deaths of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy Daybell. At that point, things didn't add up. Although they refrained from detailing the exact manner of the children's demise, the prosecutors suggested that the couple's religious convictions played an important role. According to the charges, Lori and Chad not only embraced but actively propagated religious beliefs to justify the deaths. The contours of their faith-driven ideology emerged in public discourse, leading to the nickname Doomsday Mom for Lori Vallow Daybell. Divorce records from Charles Vallow shed light on her convictions, revealing that she believed she received spiritual revelations and visions. Her purported mission was to gather and prepare those chosen to live in the New Jerusalem after the prophesied Great War outlined in the Book of Revelations. Both Lori and Chad were associated with an organization named Preparing a People, which was dedicated to readying individuals for the second coming of Jesus Christ. At first, Lori was declared not fit for trial, which led to the requirement for a treatment to restore her mental fitness. But the trial eventually began. The prosecutors painted a picture of Lori Vallow Daybell as a negligent mother with extreme beliefs. Lori herself spoke about her beliefs in the court, which made things worse for her.
Tylee has visited me. She is happy and very busy. Tylee is free now from all the pains of her life.
She was on a religious mission that took precedence over her responsibilities as a caregiver to her children. Her beliefs overshadowed the main duty of ensuring the well-being and safety of Tylee and JJ. On May 25, 2021, both Chad and Lori were indicted on charges including conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and grand theft by deception relating to the deaths of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. Lori faced an additional charge of grand theft concerning Social Security survivor benefits, while Chad was charged with insurance fraud linked to a life insurance policy on Tammy Daybell. In 2022, Lori faced another indictment by a grand jury, this time on account of first-degree, premeditated murder related to Brandon Boudreaux. On March 21, 2023, the judge decided to remove the death penalty from Lori's case due to newly uncovered DNA evidence, discovered too close to the trial to be tested and admitted into court. And finally, on May 12, 2023, Lori was found guilty on all charges tied to the killing of her children.
Charge you were convicted of the first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan. You are sentenced to the custody of the State Board of Corrections to serve the maximum allowed sentence, a fixed determinate term of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole.
Subsequently, on July 31, 2023, she received consecutive life sentences for the murders of Tylee and JJ, as well as the conspiracy to commit murder charge related to Tammy. Additional fines and restitution were imposed for the grand theft charges. As for Chad Daybell, he faces a total of 6 charges. Among these charges are first-degree murder related to the death of Tammy Daybell, insurance fraud tied to a life insurance policy on Tammy, where he was the beneficiary and received funds after her death, and an additional count of insurance fraud. His trial was postponed until April 2024. The story of these two stands as a haunting reminder that sometimes the most unsettling stories are the ones closest to home. Explore the chilling tales of abducted individuals who, by a twist of fate, discover they've been saved. Get ready for an emotional roller coaster as we unravel the mysteries in our upcoming video, When Abducted People Realize They've Been Saved.